So I'm going to have to put more on, sorry.
Is it so important to be truthful as a writer, or?
Because I suppose what I hope for in fiction is a truthful picture of my conception of the world, of the world as I go through it. But if you feel an author is berating you with an idea or with a principle, you can't trust them because it's their identification. And there's a great quote that I'm always using of Iris Murdoch, where she talks about the greatest block, the greatest obstacle to the good in human life is, vanity, self-deception. And she says, what's interesting is that's also the greatest block in art. If you read a novel which is written by an old man, which is full of teenage girls falling wildly in love with old men, you think, oh, okay. But clearly something's not right there. Yeah. So she says, what's interesting about that is that art is a case of morals, and she goes even further and says it's an analogy for morals. So that's what I mean when I say a good reading requires good being. Not that a good man writes good books, but some of the same traits which widen your empathy in life and extend your appreciation and make you a reasonable and effective person are the same in art. And the same blind spots which might cause you to hurt people in life show in novels. They're still there. And I guess the best way to put it is, if you said that in the 80s, people would ridicule you, particularly theorists, but actually it's a strange idea to say, oh, in every other job, the man you are is carried through to the job you do. But in fiction, it's nothing to do with it. It's a great egotistical idea of literature that the man you are doesn't come onto the page. Why wouldn't it? The man who goes to work in a factory brings his sensibility in himself. The man who goes to work in an office brings himself. So I think it's a strange fantasy of literature. The author can be completely removed from his work. Why would he be? He isn't in any other walk of life.
You write about film now.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I did that for 3 months, just reviewing movies like a completely normal movie reviewer, going to the previews at 10 o'clock in the morning and being forced to produce the review, in a few hours or in a day at most. It was a really good exercise, but I have to admit, after 3 months, I couldn't take it anymore. It was too much like a real job. I was completely distressed by it.
But at the same time, you wrote a screenplay on beauty.
I started it, and to me that was very, actually somebody else is doing it now, because they'd already hired someone and I didn't realise I was working to no purpose. But I found it fantastically easy and enjoyable just to, you look at the book and you think, well, let's get rid of all of that. You just remove it and pick out the dialogue. It was so nice. It was like writing a novel at top speed, and in 3 months you've written half of it. I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. But I don't know if I could ever write a script from scratch. That's quite different. But it's very enjoyable to take out all the waste from your work and just get rid of it, because a camera shot can do it like that. You don't have to describe all the clothes and everything's done.
I think I've noticed maybe the most important thing in your books. I don't know. I have to try it on. Class.
Yeah, I would say that was true.
You're talking about power and class and so on.
Yeah, I suppose if I'm honest, class is a great theme of my life, I suppose, and my family's life. So I suppose it preoccupies me because you see how your life can be so utterly transformed by little details.
But is it very British?
Well, I was talking to a journalist today about we were talking about Kingsley Amis, and the journalist said you speak as if you knew him or know him. And the reason for that, I realised, is that Kingsley was born in Croydon in South London the same year as my father, and Kingsley was slightly of a higher class than my father, but not much. My father was very working class, and Kingsley, like a lot of English boys in the 30s, got into grammar school. And in England in those days, grammar school was the great difference. If you got into grammar school, you had a chance of university, you had a chance of a life. And my father also got in, but and this is a kind of legend of my family that it's impossible for any of us to forget. His mother couldn't afford the uniform, and so that was that. And we're talking about, a few pounds, nothing. So that tiny thing, I think, to my father is an enormous deal. he's 80 now, but had he got into grammar school, maybe he would have been an educated man. As it was, he left school at 12, and that was that. So England used to be like that. There's absolutely no doubt that a tiny thing, it was called the 11 plus, this exam, which can still bring a tear to people's eyes over the age of 40, because it destroyed lives. It also made lives. So Alan Bennett, for instance, 11 plus, passed, grammar school boy, his parents paid, he went to Oxford and is an extraordinary writer. So to me, England, those things are key in English life, and it was a very unfair system.
Did you feel that it was tricky to deal with this rap culture when you wrote this book?
With popular culture, it depends. You know, there's a great essay again by Foster Wallace about Bret Easton Ellis, where he says, you know, it may be true that we live by brands and that we're despicable, banal, terrible people, but it's it's maybe not the purpose of literature just to show you horrible, depressing, banal people who do nothing but name brands. So I think that's always a danger of popular culture, that even if you mean to critique it, it's so fetishized that the moment you put it in the book, people they're attracted to it the same way they're attracted to a Gucci sign in a window. So I actually, it's probably not noticed, but I go out of my way to avoid mentioning any brand, anything like that. I don't want a single brand in my book. I can't bear it. And I think there's a Nike in White Teeth, which if I could go back and remove it, I would. So I hate that stuff. I've tried to do it, but I think unless you do it all the way, like George Saunders is apparently, he said in the interview, writing a story which is nothing but brands, which I think might be a funny, extreme way to do it. But I can't do it because I find it's like a fetishization. But with rap culture, you know, the danger is always that if you put it in, it's very easy for people to dismiss it as a kind of, oh, well, she's just a trendy, la la la. That's what they want to say. And I do have a deep feeling for hip hop, and I love it, and
And you mean that you could really find literature in hip hop?
I don't, you know, I'm one of those people, I am not going to write a piece in the paper trying to defend hip hop to people who don't listen to it. I don't really care about people who don't listen to it and hate it. But if I'm talking to someone who loves hip hop, then it's like a short, you don't have to do the whole, oh, and let's defend, and you just talk about hip hop and these extraordinary lyrics. And I don't know about you, but I would find it quite difficult to rhyme 16 syllables to a line. That's not easy. And there are a few people, not many, but a few rappers who can do that kind of thing. And I think that's extraordinary, actually. So I love it for that reason. I love it just for the pure pleasure of dancing to it.
And you got two brothers?
I have two brothers who do it as well.
Younger brothers who are rap artists.
But the funny thing, after all this, generosity of spirit towards rap in my book, I put these two rap lyrics in, and then when I tried to put them in, I think Biggie's estate, Notorious B.I.G., tried to charge me $9,000 for 2 lines, which is really extraordinary. Yeah, for copyright. And Tupac was more reasonable. Tupac was $2,000, I think, and I paid the $2,000 because I wanted to Tupac so much. But Biggie, he had to go, so I replaced them with my own lyrics. But I thought it's such a shame, with the principle of hip hop being of borrowing and exchanging, and then it cost $9,000 for 2 lines of Biggie. That's a big shame. But there you go.